Greg, thank you for joining me in this conversation. I'm really excited to have you on. I am from CD2. I grew up in southern New Mexico, in Santa Teresa, lived in Las Cruces for a while, and I just absolutely love southern New Mexico. And so I'm pretty excited to meet you and have you here on the podcast and learn more about you and who you are, what you believe in, and what your vision is for southern New Mexico.
Oh, first of all, thank you for having me. This is a beautiful setup. I met your wife. She's a lovely lady. My interactions with you so far have been very positive. I have confidence in you and I like to see what your ceiling is. Let's find out.
What my ceiling is.
Yeah, let's find out.
Well, I appreciate those words. This is about you, man. Let's see what a good politician he's already, charming.
It's funny, when I first ran for a House seat, that's what I would tell people. I'm not a politician. I'm not a politician. And I think at my core, and initially that was true, but at this point I have to embrace the truth. And the truth is I'm running for Congress, and those two things cannot be separated from one another.
So you are a politician.
I am a politician.
Yeah, you were, before we started recording, you were mentioning how your background is in law enforcement and you used to be an undercover cop. Tell me more about that and how that transition from undercover to being, the spotlight. How has that changed?
Well, in every way imaginable, to be honest. As an undercover detective, you don't really take credit for your work. Especially I was in the criminal intelligence unit, which was the CIA, more or less, of the Albuquerque Police Department. So we didn't write reports and we didn't go to court.
Mm-hmm.
So we were ghosts, but we were the problem solvers. If something big happened or there was a huge case or a sensitive case, we're the ones that they called to get it done. But we had the appropriate detective unit with us so that they could put their name on the complaints and on the warrants, but we did the work. So my history and my background is I work in the shadows. I work behind the curtain. I work where nobody's watching. I don't want to draw attention to myself.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this is the exact opposite of that. I need to let people know who I am and where I've been and what I've accomplished. And so sort of that dichotomy I struggled with it at first. And to some extent I still do, but I understand that is part of people getting to know me and people getting to understand who I am and why I'm here. So I embrace that now.
Interesting. How did you get into that kind of work?
In 1988, I accepted the invitation to go on a ride-along with a friend of mine. He was an Albuquerque police officer on Northeast Brave in the summer. And I went to briefing with him, which is where all the uniformed officers meet before they go to, you meet your lieutenant, your sergeant, they tell you about the day's news. And just sitting there with those men and women in uniform, and I just felt like I was at home. And when I got into that police car, oh my gosh, the computer lights were on, the radio was hopping. He had his own radio, so he was playing his own music.
Yeah.
The lights were going. And I'll tell you, Eric, at that moment, I knew what I wanted to do. I knew that there was nothing else on this planet that I wanted to do. I knew what my purpose was in this world. I applied for the Albuquerque Police Academy and I was accepted in 1989.
Interesting. And how did you move from being accepted to the police academy to the undercover work? How did you become a ghost in your work?
Well, I did 7 years in uniform, so I'll start there. I worked mostly graveyard, the toughest parts of town. I was a field training officer, so I trained recruits coming out of the academy. I was uniformed officer of the month in June of 1991. So I managed to separate myself, and I got the attention of a lieutenant named Carmen Rivera. She had just come from narcotics. I was a hardworking guy. And she said, I think you would do good in narcotics. Do you want to go TDY or temporary duty there? And I said, sure. Mm-hmm. I went and I met the narcotics detectives. I started hanging out with them and I saw what they did and how they did it. And sure enough, like a fish to water, I took to it and they liked me. And back in those days, they were called exempt positions, which means you didn't put in, they picked who they wanted.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like the mafia. Like they invited you in, you hang out, you prove you can do the job, you prove everybody likes you. They go behind closed doors and they do, okay, everybody, Greg, thumbs up or thumbs down.
Yeah.
They said thumbs up to me. So when you walk in, they kiss you on the cheek and you're one of the boys and they accept you. So I went to the Valley Narcotics team, which was a street team, which was street level buying rocks of crack cocaine, heroin. Well, detectives don't normally buy heroin. That's a very unique thing to do. But at the time in the 90s, there was open air dealing of crack cocaine on every street corner.
Mm-hmm.
So I purchased hundreds of rocks of crack, and I've been with people with heroin, and then you write the search warrants up and you just hit them. You hit the house, and
Interesting.
if you find what the evidence you're looking for, then you take the appropriate enforcement action.
What are some of the most important skills that you need to be an undercover cop? When you go and buy, drugs on the street, how do you blend it?
Well, for me, growing up in the South Valley, I grew up in that environment. So I grew up along the ditches of the South Valley. Many of my friends joined gangs, went to prison, did those kinds of things. And so really, I had some experience in that area.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the most important things you can do as an undercover is to control your emotions. It is because they read your face. They read your mannerisms and your face. And the first few times you do it, I promise you, it feels like you have cop written on your forehead. It just feels like everybody knows. Everybody knows what I'm doing, but they don't. And so you just have to calm your nerves, have that moment where you say, it's okay, just be calm, do what you got to do. And then once that one goes good, and then you do it over and over and over, and after a while, you actually become pretty good at it.
Interesting. So some of our, famous politicians were ex-actors, right? And they draw a lot of their experience from, or their style. I used to be an actor. I used to be in front of the camera. I used to be a reality TV star. Those are transferable skills.
Mm-hmm.
And in some ways, being an undercover cop, you're acting, right? In a way. Do you feel like that's also something transferable to politics, like many of the other examples that we have?
I do. And in the main way, I think it's more pragmatic.
Mm-hmm.
I think it taught me I had to be able to read people very quickly and make snap judgments and snap decisions, whether or not, am I going to go in this person's hotel room? Am I going to get in this person's car with them and drive away? So I had to read people very, very quickly. And that has transferred over to this arena. It is the ability to evaluate somebody very quickly and move forward. I never like to think of it as an acting thing. I think when you're acting, because I did do some long-term undercover, and when you're acting, eventually it becomes unraveled. They can pull on strings. If you're just acting, they're going to pull a string one of these days that unravels your story. So you have to be very careful about acting. You have to weave who you really are, what your real experiences really are, into your story and into what they're doing, so that as those stressful moments come up, you're not trying to remember, what did I tell this person? What was my story? It's you, it's who you are.
So you need to be very comfortable with the truth in order to stay consistent.
It seems like in that area, those two things don't coexist, but yes, the more truthful you are as an undercover, the more successful you're going to be.
Interesting. And how long did you do that again?
Well, so I did the street team from the end of 1996 to about 1999. Then I was picked to go to a unit called the Central Narcotics Unit. They created it brand new to work kilo and above dealers in Albuquerque. I showed the propensity to make big cases. I actually earned non-uniformed officer of the month while I was there in Valley Narcotics. So, I hope you're seeing a thread with me, is that I don't just like doing things. I like doing things well.
Yeah.
I don't just accept that, hey, I'm here. Okay, let's relax. I want to excel at everything I do. So I went to Central Narcotics, started doing kilo and above cases. I then got the eye of the DEA guys because I was doing such good cases. They were adopting my cases all the time. An opening came up at DEA in 1999, and they asked me if I wanted to put in for it. So Again, put in for it means we're asking you to come. Do you want to come or not? I went to DEA in 1999 and I was a task force officer there, which means I was sworn in.
Mm-hmm.
I had their creds. I went through their background check and I did all of my work in the federal system. So I did that for almost 3 years.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
When did you retire from the service?
I left the Albuquerque Police Department in 2009 after 20 years, but I left there to accept a job with the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office doing narcotics work for them.
Okay.
So back then you could what we call double dip.
Mm-hmm.
I retired. I got my full retirement and I went to work for the Sheriff's Department at Region 1 Narcotics doing narcotics work for them for 2 years.
It's interesting that you're running for Congress in CD2.
Mm-hmm.
One of the big concerns, especially out of Washington, is the border.
Yes.
And it's drug trafficking, human trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
How does your experience in law enforcement guide your decision making or votes as you would have in Congress? Or how would you represent the people of this district?
Well, I think it gives me a very unique perspective. Working with DEA, a lot of my cases were border cases.
Mm-hmm.
I did a federal Title III, which is a wiretap. I've done, so I'll give you the acronym. It's HIDTA, HIDTA, High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area. So I have authored and written HIDTA cases that worked along the border. I've worked undercover in El Paso, in Las Cruces, in Deming. I have executed search warrants in those cities. I have myself driven the load from the Bridge of Americas back to Albuquerque myself. So again, my experience with the border is real.
Mm-hmm.
It's tangible, and it's something that I can use to the people I represent in Congressional District 2, I can use to their advantage. Because the human invasion is over. So President Trump and the administration, they stopped the human invasion. The rest of the stuff, we still have a lot of challenges. I have not checked the numbers, but when I retired, we were interdicting, which means stopping less than 10% of the drugs that were
Mm-hmm.
coming into America. I don't know what those numbers are now, but I can imagine they're much higher than that. So we still, if someone's going to look at me and say, well, there's no available narcotics on the streets of America, I'll say, okay, the border problem is solved. But as long as there are drugs available for people that want them, we still have a challenge and a problem. And I understand how to do that. And, I know how to effectively fight that battle.
In 2027, you'd be sworn.
Yes.
President Trump is still president.
Yes.
The border is going to be a hot topic. What do you expect is going to happen in the next 2 years as your congressman on the border specifically in terms of crime?
Well, I expect to have some very tough decisions in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
People need to understand that the decisions that we need to make on the border, and I don't like the word safe, but I will use it in this context to keep people of CD2 safe. And that word is in italics for me. Again, they're not emotional decisions. Right now, everybody is, the debate on the border is an emotional one. It's one of ideology and emotions. And really, it's a legal problem. This is going to sound, very matter of fact or black and white, but immigration, those are laws. People want to argue about how they feel about them and how I feel about that. Well, really, how I feel about it or you or anyone else, it's really immaterial. It doesn't matter how you feel about the law. It's the law.
Mm-hmm.
And at what point do we decide which laws we're going to enforce and which ones we aren't? Well, I feel that we shouldn't enforce that law. Great. Well, I feel that we shouldn't enforce that law. Well, that's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
We can't ask every group of people which laws are okay that we enforce with them or not. We have to enforce the laws, and people that, as a police officer and as a former Marine that have made those decisions, I can make those decisions comfortably and from strength. I understand them. I understand that in some areas there can be no wavering in enforcing the law. We can't waver on that.
So earlier in this conversation, you mentioned how you have to keep your emotions under control to be an undercover cop. you have to keep your emotions under control in order to be able to legislate and make sound decisions in government as well.
I think so, but again, there is an element of humanity in it. And even as a police officer, it's called discretion.
Mhm.
You understand that there is an element of humanity in the decisions you make. And as a police officer, as a detective, this is going to sound almost in direct conflict with what I just said, but you have that discretion. So not everybody that I could have taken to jail went to jail.
Mhm.
And some of the people that I did take to jail, I look back now and I think, oh my gosh, that was a mistake. I shouldn't have done that. I still think about those things. And so there is an element of humanity in it. And you have to factor that in as part of the pie and those decisions you're making. But ultimately, you have to make it from a practical, pragmatic, what's best for the people that I represent in CD2. And through the lens of morality and through the lens of, I'm a believer. And so through the lens of morality, of, laws and what's best for everybody, not on how I feel. And so, yes, I mean, that's actually a very good point, is to keep emotions in check. Yes.
I think that's an interesting point you bring up, especially right now, considering the current political climate. If we look at Minnesota, we look at what's happening with Homeland Security funding out of Congress. What's your take on what's going on?
I'm going to tell another story. In 2002, so I left DEA in late 01, and I went so in the Albuquerque at the time, in special investigation, there was two sides of the building. There was the narcotics side, and there was the career criminal side, which means that was the repeat offender project and the criminal intelligence unit. I was asked to go to the criminal intelligence unit. That's the CIA part of the police department I was telling you about. Well, in 2002, after the Gulf War started, we got information that there was going to be a meeting at a restaurant across from UNM of people that wanted to protest the war. So my sergeant at the time asked me, I had long hair, long beard. He said, hey, Greg, why don't you go into this restaurant and get a seat by where they're sitting and see if you can eavesdrop and overhear what they're saying, what they're planning. I said, sure. So I go in this restaurant. It's a patio. It's outside. It's one of those little college streets across from UNM, Cornell, Yale. I don't remember which one. But I walk into this patio and there's a huge table with about 30 people sitting at it. And there's no one else in the entire restaurant. Nowhere. So I have that moment of, I can't sit down at a table with these 30 people and I'm the only other person in the restaurant. That's going to look ridiculous. I had two choices. I could turn around and walk out, or I can introduce myself to them. And I introduced myself to them. And again, I wove truth into my story. Hey, I was in combat in the Marines. I had some bad experiences there. I don't want anyone else to experience that. I want to be part of your group. I want to protest the war. Sit down, join us. So I joined them. It became apparent very quickly that and again, this is important because we need to make these distinctions. There were people there that truly just wanted to express their First Amendment rights and protest what was happening. There were legitimate protest groups there. But mixed in this group of 30 or so people, there were anarchists, there were agitators. They were there just for that purpose. And of course, those are the people I gravitated to. I introduced myself to them, I got to know them, and I became friends with them. So as the anti-war protests started happening, I would actually march with them. I would be with them in the crowd. And as they would plan civil disobedience, we'd have a meeting and they'd say, hey, we're going to close down I-25. Well, I would go right to the SWAT commander and say, hey, we're going to close down I-25 tomorrow. So when we would show up, the uniforms would be there and, we thwarted it. But there was right in front of the UNM bookstore one night, there was a huge, it ended up being, and there's a huge city case, a lot of lawsuits, but it was a riot. And I was in the crowd that night, again, like I always was. So all the uniforms were lined up along Central Avenue in front of the UNN bookstore. And they were telling people, if you step off of this sidewalk, you're going to jail. And the crowd was about 300 large at this time. Well, in this crowd, there was probably 5 people that were whipping the crowd up. Come on, let's go. F the police, F them, let's go, step off. And the crowd wasn't doing it. They weren't doing it. Somebody in the command rank structure decided they were going to let them have the streets. The second the uniforms backed off on Central, it was like throwing gas on a fire. It just ignited. And that crowd gained such confidence and such strength in a split-second decision. That's what led to, ultimately, people were getting hit with beanbags and rubber bullets. There was tear gas being thrown. It was wild. I was in the middle of it. And my personal observation was, had the uniforms held that sidewalk and just let me deal with the agitators, because I would call, while I was in the crowd, I would call the uniforms and I would tell them, hey, I want to describe you here. I'm going to say, hey, male wearing a black vest, white sleeves, jeans, beard, he's an agitator. And so the horses would come in and they would surround that one agitator and they would remove him from the crowd. And so I would deal with within the crowd, taking the agitators out, trying to lower the temperature. So had they just let me work those agitators, those 4 or 5 agitators that night, and kept the sidewalk, I don't think that riot would have ever happened. So, from someone that worked undercover, and so they were called Black Bloc at the time. Mm-hmm. And that I think they still exist, but really it was the precursor to Antifa. Yeah. They were trained, they had uniforms, they wore black balaclavas. We trained how to resist the police, and it's passive resistance. It's not active at that time. It was just passive. But again, resistance is resistance, right? And so from someone that's worked with them, been in crowds with them, had lunch with them, I can tell you that they are anarchists. They hate America. They hate authority. To call these things anti-ICE protest it's a misnomer. That's not what they are. It has nothing to do with ICE, has nothing to do with Ukraine, has nothing to do with Hamas war. You've seen this progression the last few months. They are just professional antagonists, and they have to be dealt with individually. So, again, my experience would tell me, identify and deal with the antagonists in the crowd, and the chances of something going bad are, lessened by a great degree.
Why do you think it went so bad in Minnesota, the killing of Renee Good and Alex Trebek?
Well, Renee Good from attack, and again, I wasn't there. It's very hard to Monday morning quarterback critical incidents, because I've been involved in critical incidents, and things happen very, very quickly. So from an outsider looking in, from someone in those situations before, they're not controlling their scenes very well. They're to allow people to drive cars into their active crime scenes creates a situation where something like that can happen. Mm-hmm. If you're going to be taking enforcement action, you need to control the area, however big that area is. When we execute search warrants, we would, at the end of the street, we'd block the street. We block the house behind. You block the house on the other side. You make sure there's a perimeter there so that people can't come in or people can't go out. Mm-hmm. It goes both ways. You don't want running people, as you're going in the front door, someone running out the back door and you get away. But the other side of that is you don't want people coming into your scene and causing chaos. And that's what those agents, and again, I'm not saying it's their fault. I'm not saying, it's chaotic. It's hard to control. Things happen very quickly. And when someone is ideologically opposed to you and they are just intent on disrupting you and what you're doing, It's very, very difficult. And so, again, without knowing their circumstances, just from an outside point, they should not have let those vehicles into their crime scene, and that would not have been a problem. But again, that's a very, very, I'm a Marine, so I'm going to give some crayon explanations here. But I think that's important. I think people always talk about, well, the police need more training. The police need more training. Sure, that's true. But the public needs training too. The public needs to understand you absolutely have the right to protest, your First Amendment right to gather, right? And to voice displeasure with your government. Absolutely. You do not have the right to actively interfere with law enforcement while they're taking enforcement action. And that's what happened in both cases.
Yeah. Why do you think it's happening in Minnesota and not all over the country where ICE operations haven't seen this level of chaos?
There's a lot of factors that go into that. The people that are making decisions there have over the years shown what their ideology is. I think when they did not allow their state police and their local Minnesota police department, Minneapolis police department, or whatever, there's probably several small towns, whatever jurisdiction that is, when they did not allow their local law enforcement to help with crowd control, they created a situation where federal law enforcement agents were on their own.
So you believe if states permit or even encourage law enforcement to collaborate with federal authorities, we'd have a lot less chaos?
Oh, I've seen it. I've seen that to be true from personal experience. Absolutely.
And what's your take right now in New Mexico? Certain politicians have been saying that they don't want to support ICE or get rid of detention facilities here in the state, or that they're going to prosecute ICE agents who operate in New Mexico.
Again, that's a multi-layered answer, and it's also, some of it is going to be sort of opinion, and so I'm trying very hard to marry those two things in a way that makes sense, but not in such a way where it comes out just my opinion. Okay. We're sort of in the same boat. So I started trying to explain this to people when the mayor's race was going on, when they were talking about immigrant friendly versus sanctuary. And the way it's supposed to work is, and what people are not grasping is, ICE was, there used to be INS. ICE came after 9/11 when they reshuffled all their departments, but they had offices in the jails. They had an officer in the jail. So as people were being arrested, they could vet those people. Were they arrested for violent crime? Had they been arrested several times? And if they needed to be detained federally, they removed them right then, right there. They transferred them from the county jail to the federal detention facility, and they took them into the federal system. End of story. Well, New Mexico, by not allowing ICE agents into the jail, and then you add in, we have no bail, so nobody stays in jail anyway. So if someone that's here illegally commits a violent crime, they're arrested for it, they're going to get right back out. And now the ICE agents have to go find this person. Now this person you can't even debate that they're a danger to society. Their record shows it. I'm not going to debate, people that don't have criminal records. I'm going to talk to you about people that have committed multiple violent crimes in our country. There it is. It's on paper. They're a danger to us. They're a danger to our children, our grandchildren, and our Americans. Now ICE has to go find them. It's hard to find people. Where are you going to find them? At home? At work? And if you find them at home, chances are what? There's going to be other people there. If you have to go find them at work, there's going to be other employees there. So you're creating a situation where you're putting the public in danger because ICE now has to do a search warrant or at least an arrest warrant. You're creating a situation where there's other people now in danger. Guns are going to be out. You're going through doors. You're going into people's businesses. Once the scene is secured, hopefully nobody gets hurt. Now there's other people there. Now you're a federal agent, and let's use the number 5. There's 5 people there that are here illegally. Well, what are you going to do? They got to go. So there are collateral damage to a system that put ICE in the position where they have to go locate this person. If they would just allow, and I say they, the people that are making decisions in our state, legislature, Senate, governor, mayor, city council, I'm including all of those things. If they would allow ICE to do their job when they're supposed to do it, they would actually eliminate a lot of what's happening here. But I don't think they want to do that.
Why do you think that?
You'd have to ask them. I have my own theories. I think that going back to it's ideological. I think to some degree, I mean, go ahead.
I was going to say, do you think the chaos helps their political motivations?
Well, you took the words out of my mouth. I mean, you know, when as New Mexicans now, they're introducing all these gun bills right now, right? During this short session. Crime's out of control. Guns are out of control. We have to do something. They created that. They created that chaos by letting people out of jail, by not keeping violent felons in jail. They're creating chaos. And then they come to us and they say, us citizens, voters, Americans, and they say, hey, in order to get rid of this chaos, you're going to have to give up some rights and maybe pay some more taxes, but we'll make you safe. Well, you created this mess. And so for them to stand up there and say, well, we can address this chaos. Well, of course we can. You created it. Mm-hmm. And, for whatever their reasons are, again, then now we're getting into, very, very subjective areas and everybody has their own opinions. You'd have to ask them. I don't know. I don't know why they're doing that, but there's no doubt that they are.
Interesting. Let's pivot a bit more into, I want to talk about what Washington gets wrong about southern New Mexico. One thing that bothers me, I've lived in Washington, I've lived all over the world with this. People always look at the border, they look at our district, which is one of the biggest in the country, and they think immigration, they think drugs, but there's a lot more going on here besides those two hot topics, right?
Absolutely.
There's obviously agriculture. There's a lot of energy production in this district specifically. Redistricting kind of gave a lot to, CD3, but it used to be entirely, the oil patch used to be entirely in CD2. Obviously, closer to my home, Santa Teresa is one of the biggest economic opportunities in New Mexico. Tell me more about that. Tell me more about the economic opportunities and about the, let's say, diversity of this district that we would represent.
Well, again, as a native New Mexican, spent a lot of time in southern New Mexico. I've been down to the Energyplex, and you're right. I mean, the Permian Basin, we have incredible natural resources available to us. I believe we should utilize those to the benefit of our citizens as much as we can. You mentioned it. The pecan farmers, the chili farmers, the agriculture, the ranchers. I mean, it's just such a solid, salt to the earth kind of way of life. And I think that gets lost in things. I think, people associate Albuquerque with Breaking Bad. And I wish it wasn't the case. When I first got to DEA, we were doing all the meth labs. We were the ones in charge of the meth labs. So really, I lived Breaking Bad before there was Breaking Bad. We're associated with that. And it's not, yes, there is that element, but you're right. I mean, we're such a diverse, culturally rich people. We just need opportunity. We need economic, we raise our children. We raise them correctly. We educate them. We send them to college. We instill good values in them. And then they have to move somewhere else to go become productive citizens. And we're taken away from our own society and our own culture. And again, as someone that opened my own business after I retired from the police department, that's the backbone of our economy is small business and entrepreneurship and the American dream, right? I mean, and it's funny, I say American dream. If you think about it, it's only the word American is attached to dream.
Mm.
No other country in this earth is there the word dream attached to it, right?
I don't think so. No.
No. So we are the shining light of the world. And New Mexico has the potential to lead in that. The people that are making decisions for us right now, in my view, obviously I'm running for office, are making all the wrong decisions. And from a Marine Corps perspective, from a police department, business, anything, anybody knows this. Bad leadership equals bad results. And that's where we are. We're in the midst of bad results. And I don't even like the word leadership, to be honest, but I like the word representative. But I do recognize that there is a leadership aspect that goes along with this job that I'm applying for here. And I accept those things and I've shown the ability to lead. But it's more important that I represent, that I get down into these communities. Like when you were talking about Santa Teresa, obviously I've been there, I've journeyed through there, but I don't understand the community. I don't understand the nuance and the intricacies of what's going on there. I would rely on people like you. I'd be like,
we can happy to bring you down there for sure.
Sure. Like you tell me, Eric, you tell me, or you put me in touch with someone down here that can articulate those problems to me. As someone that's going to be in Congress representing, I would encourage people I have to listen, but they have to give me solutions too. Like someone like yourself, you're so in touch with your community, you're so in tune with what's going on. I would rely on you not only to tell me what the problems are, but tell me what you think the solutions might be. It's one thing to say, hey, there's a problem over here. Great. Now what's the solution? Well, I don't know. I'm just telling you about a problem. Well, no, I expect more than that.
So what I'm sensing, and I think this is a good value for a representative, right? Because it's different. A governor is an executive, a congressman is what a representative.
Yes.
And I like what you're saying, because often we get politicians who think they know all the answers. But you have to listen. And you have to listen to your community. And so even coming with that humility, saying, I don't know all the details, but I'll rely on people on the ground to tell me what they want, what they feel, what they believe, and then you make the final judgment at the end of the day. I think that's a valid form of representation. And I'd love to see that more from our community.
Well, thank you. It really is the only way that I know how. I mean, as a detective, that's the core of what a detective does. You're a problem solver.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that process is, what's the problem?
Yeah.
What are my resources? Who can I trust? Who can I reach out to? Who can get me down this road? And, I again, doing federal Title IIIs and, I've shown the ability. I understand nuance and I can think critically at a federal level, at a high level, but my problem solving skills are very linear. Like, here's the problem. There's the solution. How do we get there? So I would absolutely rely on people that around me, like people in the oil and gas industry, I've talked to people in our artillery industry now, and, they brought up problems that I never even realized, existed. And so I'm aware of those things now, but the next step is, okay, chili farmer, you're telling me that this is a problem. What's the answer? And so I'm challenging people to help me down that path.
So Greg, tell me more about your childhood. How were you raised? Tell me about the values you were raised in, a bit about your family.
My father came to New Mexico as a member of the Army when it was Sandia Army Base. My mother was Martinez, Beatriz Martinez, northern New Mexico. Cimarron, could say it correctly. Or Taos is most of Martinez's. My grandfather actually lived in Cedar Crest. I have several uncles that and aunts in Cedar Crest that are Martinez, but was raised in Albuquerque, South Valley. My grandmother lived on Barcelona. I lived off of Wetrisco and Central, so I grew up playing on the ditches and on the river of the South Valley of Albuquerque. Went to Vive Vista Elementary. My dad got transferred to Topeka, Kansas. He worked for the railroad. He's a blue-collar guy. So I lived in Topeka, Kansas for my 6th and 7th grade years. So I have lived in other cultures other than New Mexico.
Kansas is very different, right?
Very different. I kept asking for a Coke, and now I meant a Sprite, and they would give me an actual Coke, and I learned to say pop. They call it pop. Yeah, I've lived in different, environments and different cultures. The one thing that I had is I was pretty good at sports. And so everywhere I went, no matter what school, once sports started and I started, excelling at that, and then you kind of become, I don't want to say popular because that sounds very, very high and mighty, but people like you when you're scoring touchdowns.
You make friends
and dropping points. Yeah, a lot of 20 points a game. You make friends very easily. You put it much better, much more succinctly than me. So no, I mean, just again, I want to be very respectful of my parents, and so I honor my parents. I don't want to judge any way that I was raised, but let's just say I faced the same challenges that all the other kids in the South Valley faced. My parents did the best they could. I respect them greatly, and I respect the job they did raising me. My father he's from Tennessee, so he was raised very Southern, very strict. They got divorced when I was a young teenager, became the man of the house at that time. I have 2 younger sisters. Went to Manal High School, which, looking back at that was my mom's decision. I was supposed to go to West Mesa, but the guys I was hanging out with, we were getting in a lot of trouble. And my mother said, "You're not hanging out with those cholos anymore." And she put me in Manal High School, which, looking back on it, altered the course of my life. I respect my mother for that decision. She worked at the school as a secretary to minimize my tuition. I worked 2 periods a day there. I worked before school picking up trash, and I worked 4th period taking care of the teachers' kids. So I worked to minimize my tuition there. So it was not, when I say I went to a private school, it was not, the images that you would conjure. It is not that. It's very working class, very blue collar. Both Democrats to this day. My father always told me that the Democrat Party was a party of the working man. He was a union man at the railroad. That changed for me in 2003.
What changed for you?
Here we go again. I'm going to tell you another story. When I first got to the intelligence unit, one of the jobs that they had was they worked very closely with Secret Service. People don't know this. Most people don't know this, but when there's not a political event or an election going on, they work cases. They work white collar cases, worthless checks. And that was very tied in with the meth that I told you, going back to the meth labs, Breaking Bad. So we worked cases with them. And because we were so plugged into our community, we had, informants and cases. And so we helped them with their cases. We got to be good friends with them. So they sent us to their training. And in 2004, we were a swing state. It was George W. versus Senator John Kerry. And my very first event was Senator Kerry. And I'm in a suit, earpiece, the whole, like you see on TV. I'm working the rope line with Senator Kerry. I'm shadowing him, which is, the rope line is people are shaking his hand, asking questions. It's chaotic. It's crowded. It's chaotic. And I'm on the other side of the rope shadowing the senator. So as I'm going through the crowd, I'm being professional, but I'm being forceful. Excuse me, Secret Service, excuse me, trying to make sure I shadow him. In case there's a problem, I need to address it immediately. Well, the people they're not only are they not moving for me, they are elbowing me. They are whispering things under their breath, not nice things. They are
To you,
to me personally, as I'm going through, like anti-police kind of stuff, like very angry. There was an anger in the crowd. They weren't moving out of my way. I had to go around them to do my job correctly. It was just a very eye-opening experience. They were angry. I didn't think anything of it. I said, this is the way politics is, right? About 2 weeks later, President George H.W. comes to Eclipse Aviation. Same scenario. I'm working the rope line with the president. This time, as I'm going through, I'm saying, excuse me, Secret Service, these people are moving out of my way. They're saying, pardon me. Thank you for watching our president. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for doing such a good job. And I know I'm painting with a really, really broad brush here. But my personal experience that day, I knew those are my people. I think I'm a Republican. Just the behavior was different. And again, the provisos. Both crowds had bad, good and bad, all those usual things. That is true. But overall, it impacted me to the point where I realized that there was such a difference in the two groups of people that I knew which one that I wanted to be associated with, and that was the Republicans.
How did your family react when you changed parties?
My mother asked me, Mijito, are you going to be one of those extremists?
And you answered yes.
I said, absolutely, Mom. It is a funny story, but if you really sort of think about that for a second, you understand that that's sort of the indoctrination level that we're dealing with when a mother would ask her own son that she raised if he's going to be an extremist just because of his political affiliation. So that's the shell that we're trying to crack through with our people, with the Hispanic people, and with our culture, is that shell of Republican bad, Democrat good. That's not the case.
Do you still feel the Democratic Party is the party of the working class, or do you think that's been changing?
I think that's been changing. And so I think I need to delineate. I think there are still what we would call, like my parents, like JFK Democrats, that I think that's what they believe. And I think that's the truth. But I think it's clear, and anyone that's paying attention knows that the Democrat Party has been taken over by the progressives, and progressives are different than Democrats. So that's a long way of saying some of them are. And the way the climate is going, the way our society is going, that sweet spot in the middle is shrinking. People are being forced to, you can't ride the fence. People are being forced to choose a side. And, in some ways, I stand very strong in some things. I absolutely think that it's okay. I mean, there's good, there's bad, there's right, there's wrong. But in other ways, I think politically and societally, I think we need to try to find that sweet spot again where we agree on things to some degree.
Are there some things you don't agree with Republican orthodoxy, or?
I wouldn't sit here and say anything specifically, but to sit here and say that I just, wholeheartedly buy into the complete doctrine and ideology of the Republican Party would be incorrect. Yes, there is nuance, just like, you and I, we could be friends. We're not going to agree on everything. We agree foundationally on stuff, but maybe how you approach a problem, or maybe how you, would solve a certain problem, we would disagree on that, but foundationally we're the same. So I would say foundationally, I'm the same as the Republican Party, but no, I don't agree with everything or every tactic that they take or everything that they do. Absolutely not.
And New Mexico is such an interesting state.
Very.
I don't think most of the country understands who New Mexico is, or the Southwest, but specifically New Mexico.
I agree.
A lot of Democrat policies or Republican policies maybe don't even apply here. And one of the
interesting. Tell me, which one? Tell me.
One of the things I'm thinking about is, I have a couple of friends in Southern Doña County who were progressives. They voted in, left progressive policymakers to county commission, city council, because they were economic progressives, kind of like what you mentioned is JFK Democrats, yes, or New Deal Democrats, who were economic progressives. But the Democrats took culture, and they ran on progressivism, on progressive cultural issues, to such a degree that some of these same friends that I have who were, what we call, let's say, Bernie Sanders progressives back in 2016, are now becoming Republicans because specifically on cultural issues. And one of the things that happened in Doña Ana County recently, I forgot the exact date, they got rid of the county day of prayer. And, I understand, you keep prayer and, religion and government separate, but that was a long-standing tradition. It was something that was very important and valuable to the community. We've had, Catholicism in New Mexico for 500 years.
Absolutely.
And it's not something that you just get rid of in a second. And that made a lot of my friends and acquaintances very angry. And they are economic progressives. And when you mention the working class, these are working class folks who are understanding that, politics comes downstream from culture. And if the cultural values aren't aligned at the top, everything starts to diverge
It does.
near the bottom. And so I know a lot of guys that are leaving the progressive side of politics, and they might still be economically progressive, but they're looking at the Republican Party as perhaps an alternative.
Man, there's a lot of things for me to address there. I'm going to start with if I think I know that if we were going to label me like economically, I would say I'm economically progressive. Like, I want business. I want southern New Mexico to expand. I want the border to expand. I want Santa Teresa to expand. I want opportunity to come to the region. I want Washington, and again, me being part of that, next January, shaping a different narrative how Washington sees southern New Mexico, or New Mexico in general. Not as just the border, crime-ridden, Breaking Bad, dilapidated state. That it's so much more than that. We have such potential here with some of the industries that we talked about earlier, but to expand those things, to again, I have a very crude understanding at this point, but that the Bridge of Americas there that I spoke about earlier, driving the load back from El Paso, is going to has some construction coming, and Santa Teresa is going to be the main point of entry. We, as a state, we need to understand that and take advantage of that however we can. Let's expand our workforce. Let's expand the cooperation between what's going on in New Mexico and what's happening in Mexico. So earlier, when I told you about talking to some of the chili farmers, one of the things you brought up to me was that our chili producing people are suffering because they're producing it in Mexico and they're bringing it across the border very, very cheaply. They're undercutting our farmers here. And ultimately, our chili farmers are going to go out of business. And so something needs to be done to address that problem. But there has to be, and I know there's solutions that both allow for economic opportunity on both sides of the border, but that benefit our people, our side, and we move forward kind of in lockstep instead of in confrontation.
How do you suggest protecting the chili farmers?
I asked them. So that's one of those things where I said, they told me what the problem was, and I said, you tell me what
what did they say?
Tariff. They need to tariff and tax what's coming in from Mexico to even the playing field with what their costs are and what they're having to pay their workers and their production costs. They need the tariffs on those products, the chili coming across to.
You think New Mexico could meet the demand that we have now nationally for hatch chili?
I don't know the answer to that. I would hope so. I know Colorado's trying to steal it from us, and we're locked in a mortal battle with them. So that's what I say. No, of course we can. Look, I've met people down there. They are hardworking, industrious, salt of the earth people. Let's give them a chance to that. Chili's our thing. If someone in France, New York City, Tokyo wants to eat chili, heck yeah, it should come from Hatch. Why not?
No, absolutely. I agree with you. No, you said it. Chili is our thing, and we need to protect that industry.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
One of the things that's interesting, I'm not sure if you're aware, the pecan farms are being acquired by the Chinese.
Yes. I heard that. And that's one of the things I heard too. I mean, somebody from, if New Mexico itself, our legislature, and again, I know I'm very good friends with senators and legislators here. So when I when I reference them, please understand that I'm not, I know that there are good, solid, hardworking people that are trying to do the right thing there in the legislature and in the Senate. So, but as a whole, the things that are coming out of our elected officials right now are not in our best interest. And I don't even think that's debatable. We see the economic impact of it. I mean, this I don't remember the Senate bill now. It's the anti-ice thing. I was in Cibola County the other day. That's going to destroy Cibola, Otero, and Torrance counties' jobs.
Yeah.
It's going to destroy them economically. And for what? It's for ideology. This is purely ideological. And they are just completely discounting the real human cost that we are going to pay as New Mexicans. And that's unacceptable to me.
That ICE detention bill is quite interesting for me. One, because of the economic impact you just mentioned. But the other one is it doesn't feel like it's in the Democrats' interest to do that. They complain about how sometimes ICE detains people in some state and then they put in a facility at the other side of the country. Wouldn't it be in our interest to keep the people we detain in New Mexico in New Mexico?
Economically, you mean?
Well, both economically, even family. Talk about family separation.
Sure.
Let's say there's family of undocumented. The kids are U.S. citizens. The parents are undocumented. They get detained and they are sent to Torrance County, but they lived in Albuquerque. It's just a 1 hour drive away. But if we ban it and it has to go to Texas, then you have to drive 6-7 hours to visit or to see what's going on, or for lawyers to come and meet with the detainees.
I honestly had never extrapolated it like that. That's a very good point.
It just seems to me like a very, like you said, we're making decisions on emotion and we're not really thinking. It's like the symbol of not having ICE detention facilities in New Mexico is more powerful than the reality that you're just going to make life harder for New Mexicans and even for the undocumented that are being detained.
Again, I don't even think that to come to that conclusion is controversial at all.
It's going to be controversial. Absolutely. It's absolutely anything ICE is controversial.
Yeah, but again, from a pragmatic and a practical point of view,
it should make sense. Right?
Yes, it should.
It should make sense.
We're mixing emotions in with things, and when you mix emotions into issues like this, it really muddies the waters. Yeah. And maybe again, I'm not one of those people that just blindly follows things. I mean, we should always question things. Are we doing things the best way? Is this the best policy? Can we do it a better way? I mean, we should always ask those questions, but not from an emotional level and say, well, I feel this way, ergo, let's act that way. No, that's improper.
Because it seems like, I believe they've been trying to push this bill for a number of years, not just immediately.
Yes.
And it feels like they know that they're going to damage the local economy. It almost feels like they don't care.
I think when you put it in the context of, yes, they've been trying to do this for several cycles now or several sessions, you get past the point where you can make excuses that they don't know. I mean, the studies have been done. The communities have spoken. It's the information is there. You're right. They're ignoring it. And I don't understand. You asked that question earlier on another topic of why. And I kind of got to the point where I really don't know. Ideology. You have to ask that.
It's just fascinating to me how the progressive wing of the Democratic Party has been able to hijack the party completely. Center Democrats or moderate Democrats, they might have a voice. They might think they have influence. But at the end of the day, the loudest person in the room is always the progressive far left. And they end up caving despite knowing that.
Well, I will tell you that they primary those conservative voices in their own party. They are actively getting rid of dissent in their own party. So the people in their party that may have a different view, it is squashed knowing that if I express this view, I'm going to be primary and I'm going to be out of here. So I think a lot of legislators, and again, I'm supposing a lot here, but in speaking with some of them, they're the theory is that I can do some good while I'm here. So I'm going to go along with them on some of these issues, even though I disagree, to try to still get some good things done. But really, in the end result of that is bad policy still gets through, and we still suffer as New Mexicans. So ultimately, we pay the price.
Do you think the new bill allowing independents to vote in primaries is going to help balance that progressive influence in primary elections?
I think the jury's out on that. I don't know. I've heard, both sides of that argument, and I think that's a possibility. I think that people could, you know, the one side of the argument is, well, all the Democrats are going to vote for the wrong Republican.
Yeah. All the Republicans going to vote for the wrong Democrat.
But I think purely from a numbers standpoint, I think that option is more just from a statistical standpoint available to the Democrats more so than it is to the Republicans as a practical matter here. But again, we're supposing a lot. I think it does give people some freedom to maybe express their views or their beliefs in the primary system a little more than they do in the general. So I think that possibility exists, as does the first scenario that I said. But really at this point, what are we now? February 4th? We're about 4 months away from finding out.
I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
Your district is after redistricting, used to be kind of Albuquerque Center, the north and the south. Now it's diagonal, right? So you represent Gallup. You would represent Gallup all the way to Hobbs.
So Gallup is not in it.
Not in it. But south of Gallup is.
Yes, south of Gallup is.
Immediately south of Gallup.
Yes, Grants is. If you go straight down I-40, west I-40, Grants is in it, but Gallup is not.
Okay, interesting. Why do you think they redistricted that way?
I've never seen the quote myself, but I understand that the former leader of the House, Brian Egolf, said it out loud. We're going to get Yvette Herrell out of there. We're going to make sure that a Democrat holds that seat.
Because it's interesting. I think Artesia, Hobbs, and half of Roswell is now in Teresa Leger Fernandez's district.
They're all cut in half. And those are traditionally, historically strong Republican.
But also the new redistricting, I think, allows you to run for CD2, right?
They brought me into this, and I intend to make them regret that.
So my original softball question was, what is your favorite thing about your district? What are the things you love about CD2?
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm going to make Southern New Mexico mad. I like Albuquerque's food better.
I like We're going to cut that. We're going to cut that.
I like our food better. Of course, no.
Wait.
I knew that would get a reaction.
You just did that to bother me, man.
It is true, but you're right. I didn't have to say it out loud.
No, but there are two genres of New Mexican food. There's the New Mexican food, which is what people in Albuquerque consider New Mexican food, which is what it is, and then Southern New Mexico has Mexican food.
Yes,
which is a different genre of food.
It is very different.
And so I get in fights. People ask me which food is better, Mexican or New Mexican food, and I just say it's different. It's different. But New Mexican food is better than Texan food.
Oh yeah, that's not even.
So Tex-Mex, nothing to do with not good.
So it depends. So I have, here in Albuquerque, I'm from here, so I have, of course, my local favorite restaurants for what I would consider, New Mexican or my food. But then, I love Lindo Mexico, for the carne asada taco plate there. Oh man, it's delicious. So I have different restaurants for different hankerings. Let's put it that way.
One of the good things about Southern New Mexico is if you want real good food, which is across the border.
Ah, okay. Well, that's a good one. No, you know one of the things that
that's going to be the most controversial take here in the whole podcast.
You said it, so not me. So no, one of the things that I'll tell you. So we just had our county pre-primary conventions, and there was 14 counties. Well, 13.5 because Chavez County is there's. Anyway, again, we're back to the gerrymandering question. And you called it redistricting. I'm going to call it gerrymandering. We're going to call things what they are here. Words matter. And people that control the language control thought. So to the extent that I can, will always call things what they are, because we need to control language, truthfully. So we made, I think it was 8 out of the 13 or 14 county pre-primaries in person.
Mhm.
I made them. And one of the things that was my favorite thing is to see men and women sitting around the room at these meetings with their military hats on, with, like, Air Force veteran, or, Vietnam veteran, or anything like that. Cause I'm a former Marine. I joined the Marine Corps in 1987. I was a reconnaissance Marine. I was a Special Forces Marine. I was in combat in Desert Storm. I got my combat action ribbon in Desert Storm. So I've actually been in combat. I was an NCO, or non-commissioned officer. So I've led Marines in combat. And so for me, that's one of my favorite things, is to connect with people on that level. Of course, there's always the inter-service rivalry. So I like to tease, or women I just met about their Air Force hat or their Navy hat or whatever. It's all in good fun. My wife and I, between us, have 6 children and 9 grandchildren. But of our 6 children, 4 were either military themselves or they married military. Mm-hmm. So right now, one of our daughters is married to a Marine there in Okinawa. So we have 4 grandchildren in Okinawa right now. And our son is in Eglin Air Force Base in Florida with 3 of our grandchildren there. He's in the Air Force. So he's the one I tease about. If he ever joined the military on veterans.
So you make fun of Air Force?
Absolutely. And Navy and Army and everybody but the Marines we make fun of. No, I love connecting with them on that level. I love seeing patriots. I love seeing people that love America, that love our country. And I share that patriotism. I served our country, I served my community, and this is my new battleground. This is my new, and I believe it's a spiritual battle. It's being played out in the political arena, the political realm. But really, if you look at the ideology and what the laws are that are being passed, it's spiritual. We're fighting for our children's and grandchildren's minds and their future and their souls. And I'm acutely aware of that. I understand what CD2 means to New Mexico. It is, on paper, with all respect to Martin Zamora and Didio Pariki, whom I respect greatly, on paper right now, it is the only real path New Mexico has to representation. We need this seat. We need conservative representation. And this seat offers that. I understand the gravity of the mountain that I'm climbing, but I accept that responsibility, and I understand what it is, and everything that I've done in my life has led me to this moment. I'm ready. I'm ready for it.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited for this election cycle. I wish you all the best.